Hello, my name is Jeremy Middleton, and today I will be presenting to you about the cultural influences on the achievement gap in higher education. Let's get to the basics. Although there are educational factors to the achievement gap, Rodriguez Hernandez speaks that socioeconomic and cultural influences are what directly impact the achievement gap. As colleges and universities remain in competition with each other, the achievement gap becomes a lesser focal point as these institutions strive to bring in big numbers for enrollment, and that means more students. Some factors related to the gap are poverty, location, income, and educational resources, to name a few. Culturally speaking, these are factors that influence the gap listed here. Spatial inequality, if you have not heard, relates to the mapping of school districts. Many school locations and their achievements are surrounded by the notion of better schools are located within prominent neighborhoods, and schools with lesser scores or lower scores are in impoverished neighborhoods. This leads to the inequality of education. Some socioeconomic influences relate to the income and available resources for these students. Certain communities have less books in their libraries, or youth group sports are difficult to attend due to cost. These costs are what causes the socioeconomic factor to weigh in on a student's education. Now, let's move on to the cause. The achievement gap can be linked to both racial and ethnic, as well as socioeconomic status. This gap is caused by colleges and universities striving to achieve high enrollment numbers. Institutions are making these adjustments to their requirements in order to allow more students in. Some of these adjustments can be lowering their SAT or ACT requirements or removing those requirements altogether. These alterations are bringing students to institutions who are not prepared for their entire college or university experience. The racial or ethnic causes are based on differences between white students and students of color. Marginalized students are falling to either basic or below basic as it relates to their achievement levels. And this is important to note. The socioeconomic status of students has led to adverse academic achievements. Low-income families have led to students attending schools with less than qualified instructors, and this information can be reverted back to spatial inequality, as prominent schools have more pay for teachers and can then reach out for teachers with more certifications or more qualifications to teach specific subjects rather than teachers having to speak on their own, speak on multiple topics. Due to the living, due to the living in impoverished cities, there are also less chance for added educational growth from tutoring or school programs. And this is mostly because low-income families can't afford the extra costs of tutoring or after-school programs. Let's move on to the effects. The achievement gap is something that is noticed by students and outside sources, and at times they are noticed by those individuals more than they are noticed by college and university officials. Students experience educational challenges set on by the achievement gap. These challenges are both social and academic, and due to these challenges, The students struggle to completion. Completion can be referred to in higher education as matriculation, which stands for enrollment between semesters, and graduation as a form of completion. The social impacts or the social growth effects um, related to the achievement gap are the student's ability to participate in group settings and team building, group homework, and other social avenues offered by colleges and universities. These other avenues could be club sports, fraternities or sororities, or any other social life aspect that colleges and universities offer. Academically speaking, the effects of this gap are better documented. Among these effects is the ability to learn how to use educational resources. Students who are underrepresented at colleges and universities may not have had access to these educational resources while they were home. And without this access, these students never learned how to use the educational resources offered to them at these institutions. So, what about solutions? There are many means for a solution to this issue. These solutions can be addressed at the K through 12 school level, as well as at the post-secondary level. Colleges and universities are constantly coming up with new measures to counteract this gap. There is no one correct method, and this allows institutions to cater to their specific student body. For example, the achievement gap based on a California institution is going to be drastically different from a small town college in Texas. One solution to this issue is an adjusted student engagement program. This program needs to send their college students and employees to K through 12 schools to work with underrepresented students and the students who are negatively impacted by their cultural influences. Working with these students will better prepare them for college and what's to come. So, let's talk about spreading the word. The student's academic performance is impacted by their cultural and intellectual experiences, and these experiences impact and determine how wide this gap really is. Colleges and university staff and faculty need to first determine what their institution is doing about this achievement gap. If there's already a program and it's showing improvement, employees need to join and help however they can. These schools need to pay attention to the statistics and make sure that the achievement gap doesn't plateau. And this means that it doesn't peak and then start to level out and still remain, in fact, a gap. The gap needs to close completely. And finally, if there's nothing being done, there needs to be a committee or department created that will work and continue to work on closing the gap. In conclusion, students of low socioeconomic status and students of color are directly impacted by this achievement gap. As institutions continue to raise enrollment numbers, the gap will continue to widen. If students continue to struggle attending college, this will lead to lower enrollment numbers, and it will also lead to students being able to matriculate between semesters. Lower enrollment numbers and less matriculation will lead to less funding for college and university, and no school wants that. I'd like to thank you for attending this presentation today. Here are the references that were listed throughout the presentation, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me.